There is something I want you to consider before we speak about prayer, before we discuss what it means to trust in it, before we examine why so many people feel their prayers go unanswered. I want you to sit with a single question, and the question is this: when was the last time you were truly still, not resting, not sleeping, not scrolling through the endless stream of noise that fills our days? I mean genuinely, completely still. Still in your body, still in your breath, still in your mind. Because I have come to understand, through many years of practice, through much of my own confusion and struggle, that what most people call prayer is not actually prayer at all. It is a kind of mental broadcasting, a sending out of requests into the air, hoping something will receive them. And then they wonder why nothing seems to come back. Prayer begins before the words. I want you to really hear that. Prayer begins before the words. This is not a poetic statement. This is not something I am saying to sound profound. It is the most practical truth I know about the nature of genuine spiritual communication. The words of a prayer are not the prayer itself. They are the vehicle. They are the container. But the container is only as useful as what fills it. And what fills a prayer, what gives it life, what gives it weight, what allows it to reach beyond the boundaries of your thinking mind, is the quality of your inner state at the moment you offer it. Think about this. You can say the most beautiful words in any language. You can recite every sacred text ever written. You can speak for hours with eloquence, with precision, with every correct syllable perfectly pronounced. And if your mind is scattered, if your attention is split between your prayer and your grocery list, if part of you is still arguing with someone from 3 days ago, if part of you is anxious about tomorrow, then what you have produced is sound, meaningful sound perhaps, but not prayer, not in the deepest sense of what prayer is. I once spoke with a man who told me he had been praying every day for 11 years, every single day. And he said to me, with real frustration in his voice, real tiredness, he said, I have done everything right. I have said all the words. I have gone through every ritual. I have been consistent. And yet I feel nothing. Nothing changes. Nothing comes. And I asked him something simple. I asked him, when you pray, where is your attention? He looked at me for a moment. He thought about it, and then, slowly, he said, I suppose I am thinking about what I am asking for. And there it was, 11 years, consistent practice, sincere intention, and yet he had never once been fully present in the act itself. He had been planning during his prayers, rehearsing outcomes, mentally constructing the future he was hoping for. His body was still, but his mind was already somewhere else, already in the version of reality he wanted, negotiating, calculating, worrying about whether it would arrive. That is not prayer. That is daydreaming with a religious tone. True prayer requires you to be here, completely here, not in yesterday's regret, not in tomorrow's fear, here, now, in this breath, in this moment. This is why every serious spiritual tradition in the world, without exception, begins its deepest practice, not with speaking, but with silence, with stillness, with the deliberate settling of the mind before anything sacred is approached. The Sufi masters would enter states of deep inner quiet before their devotions. The Christian mystics spoke of the via negativa, the way of emptying, before the way of filling. In the Zen tradition, you sit in stillness not as preparation for something important, but because the sitting itself is the important thing. The stillness is the prayer. The silence is already communicating something that words cannot. Why is this? Why does stillness matter so much? Let me offer you an image. Imagine a lake. When the surface of that lake is disturbed, when there is wind, when there are waves, when something has thrown stones into it, you cannot see to the bottom. The reflections on the surface are broken, fragmented, unreliable. You cannot see what is actually there, but when the lake is still, when the surface becomes like glass, suddenly everything becomes visible. The depth appears, the clarity arrives. You can see all the way down. Your mind is that lake when it is full of noise, full of agitation, full of thought racing after thought. You cannot access the deeper layers of yourself. You cannot access the place where genuine prayer lives. But when you still the surface, even for a few moments, even incompletely, something opens, something becomes available that simply was not available before. This is not metaphysics. This is not abstract philosophy. This is something you can verify in your own experience. Think of a moment in your life, and most of you will have had at least one, a moment when you were so deeply present, so completely absorbed in something that time seemed to stop. Perhaps it was in nature, perhaps standing before something vast, an ocean, a mountain range, a night sky filled with stars. Perhaps it was in a moment of pure love. Perhaps it was a moment of crisis, when the mind suddenly dropped all its chatter and became razor sharp and completely focused. In that moment, did you not feel something that you cannot quite name, a sense of contact, a sense of being somehow more real, more alive, more connected than you usually are? That quality of presence, that is the ground of prayer. When you approach prayer from that ground, everything changes. The words you speak are no longer empty vessels. They carry something. They are loaded. They have behind them the full weight of your attention, your sincerity, the totality of your being focused in one direction. And that is an entirely different thing from what most people do. Now, I want to speak about what prevents this, because understanding the obstacle is sometimes more useful than being told what to do. The greatest obstacle to this quality of presence in prayer is almost always the same thing. It is what I would call the noise of accumulated living. Every day, you carry more into yourself than you release. You accumulate worries, disappointments, unfinished conversations, small fears, habitual patterns of thought. By the time most people sit down to pray, they are carrying an enormous weight, and they expect prayer to function well under that weight without first doing anything to set it down. It is like trying to have a delicate, important conversation with someone while a crowd of people is shouting around you. You might manage a few words, but the quality of that communication will never be what it could be in silence. The first act of prayer, therefore, even before the first word, is the act of preparation, the act of deliberately stepping back from the noise, from the accumulation, from the constant motion of the thinking mind, and finding, however briefly, a point of stillness. How do you do this? It can be simple. It does not require elaborate ritual. Breath is the most immediate tool available to every human being. The breath is a bridge between the involuntary and the voluntary. You do not have to breathe. Your body does it for you, but you can also choose to breathe deliberately, consciously, and in doing so, you can use the breath to bring the scattered parts of your attention back into one place. A few slow, deliberate breaths before prayer is not superstition. It is not wasted time. It is the most important preparation you can make, because in those breaths, you are already shifting the quality of your inner environment. You are beginning the work of stilling the lake. Some people find it helpful to sit in a particular posture, not because the posture itself is magical, but because the body and the mind are not separate. The way you hold your body, communicates something to your mind. When you sit in a posture of alertness and relaxation, spine long, shoulders soft, chest open, you are creating physical conditions that support mental clarity. You are sending a signal. You are saying to yourself, this moment is different. This moment is set apart. I am not in the same mode I was in when I was washing dishes or driving or working. This is a different quality of time. Even 3 minutes of this, 3 minutes of deliberate breathing, deliberate settling, deliberate withdrawal of attention from the noise of your day can transform the quality of whatever prayer follows. 3 minutes is not a long time. Almost everyone has 3 minutes, but most people do not use those 3 minutes because they do not understand what is at stake. They think the prayer is the important part, and they rush into the words because that is where they believe the work is. But the work, the real work, the foundational work happens in the silence before the first word. There is another dimension to this that I want to name because I think it is important. It is not only about clearing the mind of distraction, it is also about arriving with honesty. One of the things that genuine stillness does, if you allow it, is strip away the performance. When you are truly quiet, you cannot pretend. The protective layers, the carefully managed image of yourself that you present to the world, they dissolve in real stillness. What remains is something more raw, something more real, and prayer that arises from that reality has a depth that performed prayer never can. Many people, without realizing it, pray the version of themselves they wish they were, rather than the self they actually are. They present the polished version, the version that has everything together, the version that deserves to be heard. But the real prayer, the one that moves things, comes from the unpolished place, from the part that is afraid and uncertain and tired and genuinely does not know what to do. That prayer has weight, that prayer has truth, and truth is the most powerful thing any prayer can carry. Stillness allows truth to rise. When you stop performing, even for a moment, even just for yourself, something authentic surfaces, something you may not have been willing to look at directly, a fear you have been avoiding, a grief you have been managing around, a desire so honest, it embarrasses you. And when that honest, unedited, unpolished part of you turns toward whatever you believe is listening, that is prayer in its most potent form. Not perfect, not eloquent, but real. And real things carry a different kind of energy than manufactured things. I think about the difference between a letter someone writes because they feel they should, crafted, correct, appropriately emotional, and a letter someone writes in the middle of the night because they can no longer contain what they feel. You can tell the difference the moment you read it. One is composed, the other is alive. Prayer is the same. The most beautiful formal prayer, spoken without presence, without that interior aliveness, is the composed letter. But the fumbling, broken, thoroughly honest prayer of someone who has stopped performing, that is the letter written at midnight. And midnight letters are the ones that change things. So when I say that prayer begins before the words, I mean all of this. I mean the settling of the body and the breath. I mean the deliberate stepping back from the noise. I mean the willingness to arrive honestly, without performance, without the mask, as you actually are. I mean the cultivation of enough stillness that the deeper layers of yourself become accessible, layers that are usually drowned out by the constant surface activity of daily thought. All of that is prayer. All of that is preparation, yes, but not preparation for something separate from itself. It is the beginning of the prayer. It is prayer already beginning. And here is what I want you to understand about trust. Because this entire speech is about trust in your prayers, and everything I have said so far is the foundation of that trust. You cannot trust something you have not genuinely offered. If you scatter your attention across 10 different thoughts while you are praying, if you rush through the words without being present, if you arrive at prayer carrying the full weight of an unsettled mind, you have not fully offered the prayer. You have offered a fragment of it, and you will feel that incompleteness. You will stand up from your prayer and feel vaguely unsatisfied, vaguely unconvinced, not quite believing that anything was received. Because on some level, you know that you were not fully there to send it. But when you have done the work of arrival, when you have stilled the lake, when you have sat with the breath, when you have stripped away the performance and offered something honest from your actual depths, you will feel the difference, not always dramatically, not always with great emotion or signs, but there will be a quality to that prayer that you will recognize, a sense of having genuinely communicated, a sense of having been fully present in the act. And from that sense of genuine offering, trust becomes natural, not because you have been promised a particular outcome, not because you have received guarantees, but because you have brought your whole self to the encounter. And when you bring your whole self to something, you know it. You cannot doubt the sincerity of what you offered, because you were there for it. All of you was there. That is where trust begins. Not in certainty about outcomes, not in guarantees about what will or will not be given. Trust begins in the quality of presence you bring to the act of prayer itself. When you have been fully present, you do not need reassurance from outside. You carry the evidence of your own offering within you, and that inner knowing, that quiet certainty that says, I was here, I was real, I did not pretend. That is the root from which all other forms of trust will grow. This is the first thing, the first key, the foundation on which everything else rests. Before we speak of doubt, before we speak of patience, before we speak of gratitude or action or silence, we must come back to this. Prayer begins before the words. Tend to the ground before you plant, still the lake, before you look for the reflection, arrive before you speak. Everything else flows from this. Every other form of trust we may explore has this as its basis, because if you have never truly been present in your prayer, if you have never offered it from a place of genuine stillness and genuine honesty, then you do not yet know what prayer actually is. You have been practicing something that resembles it from the outside, but the inside has been missing. Begin there. Begin with stillness. Begin with the breath. Begin with the willingness to set down the noise, even for 3 minutes, even for 1 minute, even for 30 seconds of genuine quiet before the first word. Begin with the decision to arrive honestly rather than perform competently. Begin before the words, and everything that follows will be different.